few weeks ago I was suffering from a sore back and finding it hard to move around. And one very wise and sympathetic parishioner said to me, "Offer it up, Father." Well, you can imagine what was going through my mind when they said that, when I'm standing in agony. But offer it up is a phrase regularly used by Catholics, especially in times of trial and pain. The suffering we endure in this life can be offered up for others, especially those who are in purgatory, helping them get to heaven that little bit quicker. We as Christ's followers are asked in the Gospel to take up our cross and follow him. This can only come about when we really look to the Lord and recognise in him, just as Peter did, that he is the Christ. The Lord's strong words to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan," come at a time when you think that Jesus would be looking for someone to help, someone to stand in, to save him from the pain and the suffering that lay ahead. "Get behind me, Satan," is a very powerful rebuke. Peter was doing so well. He'd only just recognised Jesus as the Christ, the one who was to come into the world. When Jesus begins to tell his followers and his disciples that he's going to suffer and to be killed, Peter wants to protect Jesus. He wants to save him, to block out the suffering and the pain by giving Jesus the assurance it won't happen on his watch. When we look back to the original text of the Gospel in Greek, it tells us that Peter stood face to face with Jesus. He stood directly in front of him, blocking his path. But the original Greek also then goes on to tell us the real tone of the phrase, "Get behind me, Satan." It tells us that Jesus isn't losing his temper with Peter. He's telling him to get back in line, to get back on board, to get back to where he belongs as a disciple behind his master. That's the key for us too. The master must lead, and we are the ones who follow. That's what "get behind me" means to us, as it did to Peter. To follow Jesus, not to stand before him, not to try and lead God, but to be led by Jesus. Jesus then calls Peter Satan. In Hebrew, the word Satan literally means opponent. It's someone who works against God's will. The Lord doesn't reject Peter. He reminds him that his human feelings, his human interests, desires and aspirations aren't always in line with God's will. In our own lives, we are all asked to make choices and decisions. We're all asked to heed the words of the Lord, to allow ourselves to be guided by God. And when things become tough, when plans don't go our way, when we experience ill health or other misfortune, we offer it up as the will of God, trusting always that God will lead us in his ways, and that his ways are always right. And we take the example of Peter, we take his encouragement. Like him, we follow close behind our Master, who leads us in faith.